Hi guys, hope you're having a good summer holiday if you're work for education and you're in the UK. So this is my sort of first of my regular Saturday releases, which is tending to be more kind of analytical and documentary based. Today I'm going to focus on someone that my wife recommended to me actually, based on something she saw on TikTok of all things, about a little talked about but fascinating killer called Elliot Turner. I don't know what it is about the name Elliot. We've already covered Elliot Rodger, now Elliot Turner, and both share some similarities in some ways. Both misogynistic, both seeing women as kind of tokens and trophies, and both utterly vile. I suppose Elliot Turner is what Elliot Rodger would have become if he'd actually managed to get a girlfriend, but that does not make him any better. This case is really sad, and I think it's one that I've been really emotionally invested in as I've been making it. A couple of technical notes. First things first. For some reason, my Shure mic didn't pick me up when making this this sort of documentary. So you've got quite bad mic quality. I mean, it's perfectly serviceable, but it's not what I would normally want. And I'm in a bit of a rush, so I just couldn't. I mean, I'd kind of noticed this after I'd edited it all, so I couldn't record it again. So the mic quality isn't great. What's the other thing? Oh yeah, Patreon. So getting a few more followers here and there. So I thought, well, why not do a Patreon? So at the end of the video, I'm going to invite you to my Patreon, and I look forward to seeing some of you accept. Okay, without further ado, here is the story.
Ambulance emergency. What's the address of the emergency, please?
Yes, please. Yes, please. My name is Mrs. Turner from...
What's the address?
Number...
Yes.
Queenswood Avenue.
And what town are you in?
No. I'm just calling you because...
What town are you in?
Oh, Bournemouth.
Bournemouth. Just confirm that address for me.
Number 4.
Yes.
Queenswood Avenue.
Is that in Queen's Park?
In Queen's Park, yes, please.
Okay, just confirm your telephone number for me.
01202.
Yes.
5... Hang on.
Okay, don't worry. Just tell me what's happened there. The main reason for the call.
What it is, my son's friend is staying with us. This morning, I tried to wake both of them up, but the girl didn't wake up. We tried to wake her up. I don't know what it is.
When you say you can't wake her up, what, is she breathing?
No, not that we could. I don't know.
Right. Well, we need to find out. We need to find out. Are you on a phone that you can take up to her?
Sorry?
Are you on a telephone that you can take up to her?
Yes.
Are you near her now?
Yes.
Right, I need you to check for me. Is she conscious and breathing? If you call her name or just shake her arm, just see does it rouse her?
No.
Right, now is she breathing?
No.
Right, how old is she?
Elliot Turner was born in Birmingham in 1991. He was the son of a wealthy jeweller and worked part-time for him at the shop the family owned in Bournemouth called R.E. Porter. In 2000, he moved south with his family when they took over the shop from his grandparents. University soon beckoned, but he dropped out of Southampton Solent University after less than a term. Parties and women back home were now the major part of his life. Turner met Emily Longley in December 2010, and the pair hit it off immediately. It would appear the relationship worked at first, with both saying they loved each other. But Emily was a young and vulnerable girl who had suffered from eating disorders and health and emotional problems in Auckland, New Zealand, where she had emigrated from Bournemouth with her family when she was 9. Emily had been born in Britain, but her family had emigrated when she was 9. She had returned to live with her grandparents Ronald and Zosia Longley in a large detached cottage near the seafront in Southbourne, near Bournemouth, to study for a business national diploma at Brockenhurst College in the New Forest. She also worked part-time at Topshop in Bournemouth. Exceptionally good looking and with a bright and friendly personality, Emily attracted the attention of men, and Turner was unable to handle it. Soon after they got together, Turner was already showing signs of becoming obsessive. He had form in this department. In January 2008, he had received a harassment warning letter from the police when he was 16, which told him not to contact an ex-girlfriend after he bombarded her with texts and emails when she ended their relationship. During the trial, one friend had told the jury that after a girlfriend had left him, Turner said he wanted to suffocate her with a pillow. Elliot Turner fancied himself as some form of celebrity in the bars and clubs in the affluent areas of Bournemouth and Poole. Dubbed All Talk Turner by his friends and described as full of gangster bullshit bravado by his own father, Turner led the life of a supposed playboy with money, girls and drink around the clock while boasting of the cash he had. But the flash lifestyle hid an immature, manipulative, jealous and violent young man who could not handle rejection, especially from women, and in particular from Emily Longley. Turner ran with a crowd of other young men, many of them from wealthy families who called themselves the Firm. They spent time drinking £180 bottles of Grey Goose vodka around the millionaire's enclave of Sandbanks or the wealthy area of Canford Cliffs. Turner was often spotted pulling up in his black Mini Cooper and told anyone who would listen that he had had affairs with reality TV stars and even spent time in the Priory Clinic to kick a cocaine habit. Women were only referred to as birds, or in Emily's case, as the volatile relationship hit the rocks, bitch, or much worse. But many of his friends knew that Turner was a boaster, and those who gave evidence in his trial all said they never took a word of what he said seriously. He was described in court by the prosecution as showing himself to be threatening, aggressive, violent, controlling, and possessive towards Emily Longley. Emily went back to Auckland, New Zealand to see her parents in April 2011, and Turner was incensed by Facebook pictures of her with ex-boyfriends and other men. She had suffered from abusive relationships back home in New Zealand and had emotional problems and was vulnerable. When Emily returned, she wanted out of the relationship, and she slept with his best friend Luke Ashford after an argument triggered by Turner's obsession. In the days before her death, Turner accessed her phone and Facebook accounts and learnt she was arranging to meet men. He went to one club in Bournemouth and armed himself with a lump hammer to confront them when he learned she was out with another man. He had driven there in his black Mini Cooper and was found to be sat hitting the steering wheel in anger, witnesses said. This was even though he admitted he had slept with 3 women during the relationship. That night he didn't find Emily, but he warned the other suitor, Lewis Powell, that she was his girlfriend and to back off. Crying, he then told friends he had killed Emily with the hammer and dumped her in bushes before saying that it was a joke. The day before he murdered her, he asked his impressionable friend Tom Crow how he should kill Emily as his obsession started to reach a crescendo. They even discussed setting her on fire in his bedroom, using petrol and strangling her, and the pair even practiced strangleholds. On the night of May 6, 2011, Turner thought he had patched up his relationship with Emily and they were boyfriend and girlfriend again. But she was not reading from the same hymn sheet. Turner was angry when he met up with her and saw she was dressed in very short shorts, a leopard print bra and a small waistcoat. He said she was dressed like a whore and he continued to argue with her in a bar called Cafe Shore. Finally, a fed-up Emily threw drinks over him and he attacked her before later that night she fatally agreed to go back to his house in the affluent Queen's Park area of Bournemouth to talk things over. This was despite Emily texting Turner to say, "Hit me with a mallet. Do whatever you want to me. I will never get back with you. I actually hate you." Tom Crow was the last person to see her alive other than her killer. He told the court that Turner asked him to kill Emily using the lump hammer, but he told him to fuck off. The last thing he saw was Emily trying to lock Turner out of his own house, but the 13-stone man overpowered her and they went inside. A neighbour had walked by and Mr. Crow presciently told him he thought Turner would kill Emily. The prosecution said that Turner used a pillow to smother Emily and then he strangled her using a sleeper hold. Forensics found the teenager's makeup on the pillow, and Emily's makeup was also on Turner's shirt. But Turner stuck to the story he told police and paramedics when they were called to the house on the morning of May the 8th, that Emily had repeatedly attacked him, and he defended himself. In the witness box, Turner said that he grabbed Emily by the neck for 5 or 6 seconds and then pressed down on her as she lay on the bed to stop the attack. He then stormed out of the bedroom and came back, got into bed, and woke up to find her dead. He said he had loved her, and she had loved him, and had only wanted the best for her, and he denied murdering her. When arrested at the scene, he had his passport in his pocket and his bags packed, the court heard. Police were suspicious from the start because of Turner's threats to Emily, but there was no conclusive cause of death except for telltale hemorrhages under her eyelids that were consistent with neck compression. Following the incident in the bedroom, detectives decided to bug the family's £350,000 home and discovered that his doting parents had helped cover up their son's crime. Highly incriminating tapes played to the jury told how Lee Turner, Elliot's father, had destroyed his son's confession. During one discussion, when Anita Turner, his mother, refused to believe her son had done anything wrong, an exasperated Lee Turner said, he, Elliot, fucking strangled her. Turner himself was heard to say, I just flipped. I went absolutely nuts. I just lost it. I grabbed her as hard as I could. I pushed her like that. He was heard calling Emily a fucking bitch and talking about the fucking anger that had built up in him over her. Lee Turner said, we have perverted the course of justice by destroying evidence. But Anita Turner was heard to say that they had been right to do it. They also discussed changing Anita's story about the delay in calling the ambulance. Anita had called Lee first, and there had been an hour delay in calling paramedics, while calls went to and fro between the family. Anita admitted that she took a jacket from Elliot Turner's bedroom, but that she didn't think it was wrong. The prosecution said police were distracted by her husband, and the confession letter was in the coat. Police also examined Turner's computer and found searches about death by strangulation. Frankly, Turner had left too many clues, and too many threatening text messages, and told too many friends of his obsessions and violent thoughts. The police were immediately suspicious, and they acted swiftly to get the evidence they needed to charge him. They were convinced he was the murderer. The bugging of the family home that May and June of 2011 was the most damning evidence as the three discussed what they would say to the police, with Elliot Turner leading the discussion and orchestrating the fabricating of evidence. It was a telling example of the arrogance of a young man who thought he could manipulate his parents, the police and his friends to get away with murder. Elliot Turner's defence team tried to get the bugging evidence ruled inadmissible at the start of the trial, but failed. So the jury heard Lee Turner say, he fucking strangled her, and Elliot Turner say, I fucking lost it. I grabbed her. All three in the witness box were forced to listen to their scheming, and they had little answer to the incriminating conversations that sealed their convictions. Sentencing him at Winchester Crown Court, Mrs. Justice Linda Dobbs described Turner's lack of remorse as chilling. Following a 4-week trial, Turner was found guilty of strangling his 17-year-old girlfriend, while his parents were convicted of perverting the course of justice. The following day, Turner was jailed for life and told he must serve a minimum 16 years in prison. He had pleaded guilty to perverting the course of justice earlier in the trial, in which he was handed a 9-month sentence to run concurrently. His parents had been bailed to a later date, but had been warned too that they faced jail. His father sat near the dock as he was sentenced. Emily's family were also allowed to sit by the dock as Turner, wearing a smart suit, open neck shirt and handkerchief, swore as he was handed the life sentence. The judge told him, by your actions you have deprived a large, tight-knit family of a daughter, granddaughter and sister. You have deprived young people both here and in New Zealand of a good friend. The descriptions of Emily Longley paint a picture of a fun-loving girl who brought a ray of sunshine into the lives of those she touched. She added, you have extinguished that light, suddenly and needlessly. You told your parents you loved Emily Longley, but you do not know the meaning of love. Loving someone is not seeking to control that person's life, not telling someone that they are a whore, not telling friends to threaten them and not slagging them off to friends. You did not love her. She was just a trophy. The relationship, if that's what it can be called, was all about you. The judge continued. It was about control. Control which you carried out using aggression and threats. You could not be seen to be dumped by her, or be seen to look like an idiot in front of your friends. Your anger grew, your resentment built up and festered. Your arrogance during your relationship with Emily Longley, during your time on remand and even throughout this trial, has been breathtaking. Your lack of remorse is chilling. The harrowing accounts in the statements I have read from her family detail the devastating effect your actions have had. Emily's mother said no parent should have to plan their child's funeral. The judge added the murder had been premeditated, and Turner strangled her, to which Turner mouthed bullshit. She added, you bullied, threatened and assaulted Emily. The sentence will not bring Emily back or bring her justice. You can put away your thoughts of champagne, Bentleys and girls and concentrate on why you are serving a life sentence. Outside court, Emily's father Mark, who had travelled all the way from New Zealand, said, we are extremely relieved this has come to an end, and we can put this behind us. His lack of remorse has been chilling, and every day his mum has looked me in the eye. I wasn't surprised Elliot showed no reaction, although I'm sure he will be feeling it. This trial has been horrific, and we've had to digest these horrendous facts. We are pleased he is not on the streets now. He is an incredibly dangerous person, and we are relieved he cannot do this again. Emily's mum Caroline added, I found it fantastic to look him in the eye when the judge was saying those things, and gave him a telling off. What the judge said to him was almost to the word what we wanted to say. One of the important things was getting justice, but also that Elliot will be off the streets. Every night before Mark Longley goes to sleep, he says goodnight to a picture of his 17-year-old daughter Emily, murdered by her ex-boyfriend in 2011. Longley, 51, a warm and sensitive man, also talks to Emily in his head. She was his mate as well as his daughter. Death is the atom bomb for emotions. If your internal wounds were visible, you'd be rushed to hospital and you'd be in intensive care, says Longley, speaking from his home in Auckland, New Zealand. We don't talk about death. There's no duck cover and hold routine. We know what to do in an earthquake, but we don't know what to say or do if someone dies. We are kind of awkward about it. Recently, Mark Longley has released a 3-part podcast exploring death, grief, and how to survive after your world explodes. Piecing together his story with those of others who have lost someone, and the opinions of grief experts, the podcast also features archival home recordings that capture Emily's playfulness and spirit, as well as key recordings from throughout the murder trial. I'm only playing small snippets here because I feel it's worth diving into this yourself.
I knew when I saw her for the last time that this was probably going to be the last time, but people from provincial New Zealand aren't very good at opening up. So I never got to say to her all the things that I'm saying to you right now, because people don't do that. Yeah. Certainly not in Blenheim in the 90s.
I wanted human contact, he says, but people didn't know how to talk to me. I found the whole process of grief quite strange. I noticed people were really uncomfortable talking to me about grief and about Emily. I was in a weird paradox where I felt isolated, and I wanted human contact, but people didn't know how to talk to me. The journalist in me thought this was interesting, and I wanted to examine it. It still haunts Longley that no one saw the warning signs of her toxic relationship with Turner. He believes she would still be alive if someone had recognised the relationship for what it was and helped her escape. Although Emily was killed in the UK, Longley's research into domestic violence is centred on his home of New Zealand, which has one of the worst rates of intimate partner violence in the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. Police attend a family violence incident once every 4 minutes in the country, and the Labour coalition government has pumped a record 320 New Zealand dollars into the sector in an attempt to tackle the horrendous statistics. Longley strongly believes that more of the responsibility of confronting domestic violence lies with men. One of the most common questions in family violence is, why didn't she leave him? Not, why did he hit her? Says Longley. The man is out of that equation. All the onus is on the woman. There's no suggestion the man shouldn't have been hitting her. And we need to reverse that. It shouldn't be up to the woman to leave and go to a refuge. It should be up to the man to stop being violent. Longley is preparing for a bit of a break after tackling the experience of grief so intimately, but is then considering another podcast, this time examining domestic violence. It is almost exactly a decade since Emily died, but Longley says grief never ends. What a load of rubbish closure is, he says. People keep asking if you have closure. You never have closure. I think people wanted to feel I had closed that murder off so we could all move on. You never move on. I miss Emily every day. I think about her every day.
I'm no longer angry at Turner. I let the anger go. Otherwise it would have destroyed me. Turner let his anger rage out of control, and it killed Emily. I am better than that. But there is one more thing I have to do to close Turner out of my life. I'm going to have to forgive him.
Emily, darling. Hello.
Daddy.
Emily.
Look at Daddy.
Daddy?
Yes. What is it? Gently. What? Emily.
Daddy?
Emily. Boo. Boo.
Powerful story, isn't it? I just feel nothing but sadness for her family, especially her father, just the pain. And I really recommend you check out those podcasts because they are sublime. And on top of all of that, he looked like this. What a prick. I really have so much hatred for this man. I hope he rots in jail. I hope he's watching this, actually. Just time to plug my Patreon. You should see below me now the Patreon address, www.patreon.com/darktimesyoutube. I'm going to put some exclusive stuff on there, and I'm going to put very soon on there some uncensored content of videos already released. For example, the industrial accidents compilation, which has got all the accidents like actually in there, which I think you'll find fascinating and morbidly curious. But really looking forward to seeing you on Patreon. Please join my Patreon. I would really appreciate your support, and I know you're going to like what's on there. See you soon. Bye for now.